I am Katerina Nestorenko. Today, Russia is burning, the Kremlin is panicking, and there are calls to declare Putin an emperor. Critical oil facilities have been successfully attacked right near Moscow. A third of the superpower will be left without gasoline this summer. The resort season in Crimea opened with toxic fuel oil right on the beaches of Yalta. Occupier gear is being pulverized in Zaporizhzhia, with rear positions destroyed 150 kilometers deep. The rear is in chaos. Putin's associates have put a report on his desk about Gerasimov's lies and a terrible defeat. Shock across the ocean. A dark-skinned Jesus Christ staged a massacre near the White House attempting to eliminate Trump. Almost 200 days in the bunker. Paranoia is off the charts. Who is coming out to the people instead of Putin? Be sure to watch until the end. We're analyzing the double. All this and more in just a few seconds, but right now, like this video and subscribe to the channel Ukraine Today so you don't get lost on YouTube. Well then, let's get started. Vladimir region. Just to clarify, that's right next to the Moscow region. Our defense forces successfully attacked the oil pumping station Vitorogo. This is a critical hub. The entire chain of petroleum product transportation depends on this facility. Any shutdown of Vitorogo and the Kremlin's fuel supply logistics just collapses before your eyes. But that's only the first part of the Morelison ballet. Now let's move to occupied Luhansk. There, the enemy also, to put it mildly, didn't have it easy. A precise surgical strike hit the local oil depot directly. It burned beautifully. As they say, there is more to come, and there is no doubt about that. Recently, Volodymyr Zelensky officially announced new long-range strikes against the Russian Federation. So Russians are advised to start preparing right now. From your comments, I see that many people watch us from Europe, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are truly grateful for your support and proud that we have such sensible viewers. Please comment below which country you're watching from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments, and in the meantime we continue. And now on to the most interesting part. The so-called great energy superpower, as they like to call themselves, exports oil all over the world. But there's a catch. This summer, a third of Russia itself will be left without gasoline. Damage to oil facilities and refineries could seriously affect the overall fuel situation. A number of Russian regions will be affected, with the southern part of the country suffering first, but not only it. Kremlin sources insist that problems could even arise in the Leningrad and Moscow regions. Even greater problems are expected in the occupied Crimea and Sevastopol. There, on top of reduced refining, a new blow has been dealt. There is an increased risk in logistics along the land corridor from the Rostov region. Transporting fuel is becoming too dangerous. DNR, LNR, Crimea, Rostov region, Krasnodar Krai, Republic of Adygea, Dagestan. And that's far from the full list of regions where gasoline and diesel will be hard to come by this summer. According to the regime's own forecasts, the crisis could affect 20 to 30 regions of Russia. Overall, a noticeable increase in fuel prices is expected across the country. How are things with the Russians, as you were saying? Kyiv in 3 days? And in the end, Putin can't even supply his own regions with fuel. The oil that spilled after the fires at the Tuapse refinery was carried to the coast of annexed Crimea. According to the Telegram channel MASH, pollution was found on beaches around Sevastopol as well as in Alushta, Gurzuf, Faros, Yalta, and on the beach of the Ipeta Sanatorium. Here are the details.
There are only a few days left before the start of the resort season in annexed Crimea. However, instead of news about preparations, beaches and residents are increasingly reporting oil sludge washing up on the coast.
I'm currently standing at Liverpool, witnessing this sad and somber scene. Yesterday, people were already collecting oil sludge here, and yet there's still a lot left.
The first reports appeared on May 7th. Already on May 9th, the Telegram channel Crimean Wind published photos of pollution on the beaches on the northern side of Sevastopol. According to satellite image monitoring, a trail of oil pollution about 30 kilometers long was detected in the sea.
This stuff is nasty. The spots look like small splashes all around. In
the following days, fuel oil started to be found on the beaches of Fyol Greater Yalta, and then on other parts of the coast, from Sudak to Sevastopol and even Yevpatoria.
You have to be able to admit your mistakes. There is fuel oil in Yalta. Even if there isn't as much of it as, say, in Tuapse or Anapa, the fact remains.
The Russian environmental monitoring project Transparent World, after analyzing satellite images from May 12th and 13th, reported signs of film pollution on the sea surface along the southern coast of Crimea. According to experts, traces of pollution were observed from Alushta to Sudak and then shifted toward Feodosia and Koktebel. Environmentalists are also reporting the pollution. According to Russian environmentalist Zora Kovanosyan, volunteers were cleaning up the fuel oil in Gurzuf. Meanwhile, residents of Yalta complained about the lack of a systematic response from the authorities.
I called emergency services and messaged the governor, but no reply. Others complained too, but it seems that, except for us, no one is planning to clean this up. I was upset that nobody cared.
In Sevastopol, officials claim that no mass discharges have been recorded. According to official data, during the May holidays, 12 reports of local pollution were received, and the relevant services collected 31 bags of contaminated soil. However, after that, the topic practically disappeared from the official agenda.
Few see the beach behind the scenes in spring. Storms wash up microplastic mountains from the sea all winter. Oil residue coats the rocks. It's already the second season of ship accidents. We collect plastic waste and oil residue in bags and burn them. It's problematic to remove all of these.
The authorities in Crimea almost never comment publicly on the pollution of the coastline, despite numerous reports from Yalta, Gurzuf, and Miskor. According to environmentalists, the oil residue could have reached the shores of Crimea after an oil spill near Anapa, which was recorded on April 7th. Satellite monitoring data shows that the size of the oil slick increased dozens of times over several weeks, and currents and wind gradually carried the pollution toward Crimea. Experts link the spill to the tanker Sofia, which was in the area of the incident. At the same time, the authorities of Russia's Krasnodar Krai claim that the pollution was caused by Ukrainian drone strikes on civilian vessels. The causes of the incident are still being discussed. New oil residue wash-ups are being recorded on the Crimean coast, and according to eyewitnesses, it is often local residents and volunteers themselves who are cleaning up the contaminated areas.
A real battle for logistics is unfolding on the front line. Putin's troops are making desperate attempts to cut off our routes between Zaporizhzhia, Hulyai-Pole, and Orikhiv. However, Ukrainian defense forces are firmly holding back these attempts. Southern Defense spokesperson Vladislav Voloshin reported that Russian sabotage and recon groups are trying to advance, but soldiers are detecting and eliminating them. Defenders emphasize that despite constant pressure, Putin's invaders have no chance of breaking through our defenses, and even less so of cutting off key logistical routes in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Instead, the Laptenogi are rapidly losing their own logistics. These are shots from occupied Mariupol.
And
Here's another video, proof of how deep behind enemy lines, Russian logistics are being methodically roasted. But it's not over. Ukrainian Titans are destroying enemy logistics 100 to 150 kilometers deep. The results speak for themselves. The Russians are facing a severe fuel shortage not only in the occupied Crimea, but also in the brutally seized territory of the Zaporizhzhia region. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of the Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a massive horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us. Lukashenko is putting Belarus's rapid response forces on war footing, and the Kremlin is preparing another 100,000 mobilized troops. The enemy's plans in northern Ukraine are revealed. From creating a 20-kilometer buffer zone in the Chernihiv region to a renewed assault on Kyiv. Will Russia launch a new offensive from Belarusian territory as early as this fall? Find out about this right now.
Russia is considering several courses of action in northern Ukraine, from establishing a buffer zone in the Chernihiv region to attempting to move toward Kyiv again. According to RBC Ukraine, The most realistic scenario, if Russia does launch an offensive, is an attempt to create a buffer zone in the Chernihiv region, with a depth of up to 10 to 20 kilometers. The least realistic scenario is a new offensive on Kyiv. For a possible operation in the north, the Kremlin may be preparing an additional mobilization of another 100,000 troops.
Based on information provided by one of RBC Ukraine's sources, the Russian forces will not be able to launch an offensive, based on one of the specific options they have chosen before the autumn season.
President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the Russian dictator Putin wants to persuade the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, to join new Russian aggressive operations.
Is there a threat from Belarus to Ukraine? Probably there is. All the more so because this is being discussed more and more seriously at the highest level, including by the president of Ukraine. At the same time, it should be understood that it is unlikely that Lukashenko is eager to enter this military conflict, since he probably understands very well what potential threats this creates for him.
Indeed, the Batka father. Lukashenko recently stated that Minsk does not intend to get involved in the war in Ukraine. He clarified that this is only possible in one case, if Ukraine commits aggression against them.
Perhaps you have noticed I don't react at all to the constant chatter coming from the city of Kyiv, from President Zelensky. We have no intention of becoming directly involved in the ongoing war in Ukraine. As for his statement that Belarus will be drawn into the war, as I have previously stated, it will only be drawn in under one specific and singular circumstance. If an act of aggression is committed against our territory, and in that case, it is not simply about being drawn in. As we also heard from the President of Russia, we will defend our shared homeland together. There are two states located here, from Brest all the way to Vladivostok.
A general or open mobilization in Belarus has not been declared at this time. However, targeted training activities are being conducted. The country regularly carries out scheduled conscriptions and military training for reservists. In addition, on May 21st, Putin and Lukashenko conducted the second stage of joint nuclear force exercises. This demonstrates Russia's increasing control over Belarus. Russia now has more opportunities to use Belarusian territory for its military operations. Although for Lukashenko, getting involved in the war against Ukraine is not advantageous.
It seems like Lukashenko's life was just starting to get back on track. The United States is lifting sanctions, so it seems like everything should be going well, and now to get involved in some kind of war, well, that's probably the last thing he needs. But at the same time, he is obviously forced to somehow respond to the constant pressure from Putin, which is clearly only increasing. That is, it's obvious that Putin needs a victory in Donbas as soon as possible. For that, it's necessary to stretch out the Ukrainian forces, and to do that, a threat needs to be created against Kyiv and Chernihiv. Therefore, the pressure on Lukashenko in this regard is probably very, very serious.
I see. But as usual, and as has become tradition, Lukashenko will maneuver.
Apparently, at this particular moment in time, he is forced to maneuver, on the one hand, continually and consistently demonstrating a willingness to support Putin in words. He keeps declaring that he is ready, that he will always literally provide full assistance, support, and do everything. But in reality, Lukashenko most likely desires absolutely nothing less than to actually get involved in this war. That's why I think that the statement from the Ukrainian authorities is, first and foremost, a warning to Lukashenko that no matter how much Putin threatens him, if he directly gets involved in this war, the consequences for him will be worse than anything Putin has promised him.
Experts also believe the Belarusian army lacks the experience and strength of the Ukrainian army.
It remains an entirely open and uncertain question how the Belarusian army would behave against the Ukrainian army, which has vast and extensive combat experience in confronting a much more serious and dangerous enemy. In addition, Ukraine has recently substantially bolstered and enhanced its capabilities in terms of long-range strikes and drones. Ukraine is now consistently and effectively launching strikes against oil refineries deep inside Russian territory. That is, SBU sanctions are reaching as far as Perm, Tuapse, the Urals, and the Leningrad region.
Currently, according to RBC, activity in the Chernihiv-Kyiv direction and the level of threat are low. However, the military and political leadership is monitoring several factors, events, and signs that may indicate Russian preparations for possible offensive actions in the north. First and foremost, this is the number of troops near our northern borders. On the Belarusian side, as before, there are 4 battalions of the Belarusian army stationed. This is about 1,900 military personnel who are constantly being rotated. There are not enough Russian troops to carry out offensive actions either from Belarus or from the Bryansk region. Be that as it may, Ukraine is not letting its guard down. According to President Zelensky, all components of the defense forces are working to strengthen protection in the Chernihiv-Kyiv direction. And through diplomatic channels, the relevant data will be passed on to partners and signals will be sent to Belarus.
In all these areas, we will take action so that the population can feel confident that Ukraine is protected, the armed forces are in place, the necessary weapons are available, and the appropriate personnel in the required numbers are on site. And even if the enemy is considering their potential moves, they will see the strength of the forces stationed here. I think their desire will gradually fade away.
As the regular Russian army weakens against our defense, the Kremlin is switching to desperation mode. The enemy cannot achieve anything significant on the battlefield, so they have turned to terrorizing peaceful cities. In addition to the shelling of Kyiv with hazel shells, some very strange things are happening right now in Sloviansk. There, local residents are finding suspicious leaflets scattered around the streets. They visually resemble counterfeit money. Apparently, the occupiers dropped this trash at night from drones. With such a crude method, Russia is trying to intimidate people and provoke at least some kind of mass protests against the Ukrainian authorities. But it looks pathetic and reveals their complete helplessness at the front. Vladimir Putin has been informed about the threat of a terrible defeat for Russia in the special military operation and as soon as next year. And it was done by the president's own associates, a general whom he trusts. They directly told Vladimir Vladimirovich that Valery Gerasimov is blatantly deceiving him about the real situation at the front. This was reported by the Insider Telegram channel close to the Russian elite, Kremlin Snuffbox. A high-ranking source in the Russian presidential administration anonymously confirmed that the old man was indeed told directly. If he continues to trust Gerasimov, Russia could suffer a terrible defeat as early as next year. Will there be any consequences from this situation? It's hard to say for now, but everything sounded exactly that threatening. At the same time, military officials close to the chief of the general staff completely rule out his resignation. They are confident that Putin's trust has not diminished. Their position is rock solid. They say Gerasimov has never deceived the president. And all these calls for the general's resignation, in their opinion, only benefit Russia's worst enemies, Russia. At this point, I just want to ask, what about the little takmachka? But let's get back to the Kremlin sheep. The general's inner circle is asking, if Gerasimov leaves, then who is supposed to win with? With Defense Minister Belousov? After all, according to them, he can't properly carry out mobilization or plan anything at the front. These are the kinds of victorious showdowns happening at the very top. What do you think this could lead to? Write your thoughts in the comments, I'll definitely read them. And while in Moscow the regime is afraid of losing the war overseas, in the US there's a completely insane action unfolding. There, a black man who called himself Jesus Christ opened fire right near the White House. All the leading American media are reporting on this. Around 6 in the evening, a young man named Naishir Best, 21 years old, approached the checkpoint near the residence of the American president. He suddenly pulled out a revolver and opened fire on the US Secret Service officers. A fierce shootout began, which was captured by a film crew who happened to be shooting a report nearby at that very moment. President Trump said that the matter is close only for both sides to remain far apart. Eyewitnesses say that up to 30 shots were fired. The special services reacted instantly and shot several bullets into the attacker. He did not survive. 2 people were also injured during the shooting. None of the security agents were harmed. And now, about the identity of the shooter himself. He is an extremely mentally unstable person. On his social media, he seriously called himself both Jesus Christ and Osama bin Laden at the same time. He also openly wrote there about his desire to harm Donald Trump. For the Secret Service, this messiah was an old acquaintance. Last summer, he had already tried to storm the White House, after which he was forcibly sent to a psychiatric hospital. He regularly violated a court order and loitered near the checkpoint, but this time he came armed. Donald Trump himself was inside the White House at the time of the shooting. He was not harmed at all, and the journalists were urgently evacuated into the building by the staff. But let's get back to the planet's main bunker paranoiac, a topic that makes the Kremlin security guards' hair turn gray. Putin will be killed soon. And is it really true that the elites are all ready for this? The bunker dweller hasn't left his residence. 196 days. How many body doubles does Putin really have? Who are they and how are they trained? More on this coming up.
While Russians are being told about a strong leader, the head of the Kremlin himself is hiding deeper and deeper behind security, bunkers, and even body doubles.
We are fully aware of exactly how it will all conclude, but we will not be making any public statements about it.
Putin, or rather the bunker dweller, has almost disappeared from Russia. His new record is 196 days. That's the pause in his travels, across the regions. He hasn't taken such a long break even during COVID.
The situation in the country is getting worse and worse. Putin is becoming more and more afraid for his life. And his trust in everyone around him is now shattering and dissolving into nothingness, like a fragile soap bubble. And at this moment, with Ukrainian long-range drones flying overhead and President Xi Jinping meeting directly with Donald Trump, his deep-seated paranoia and conspiratorial mindset are just completely and utterly taking over every single part of his brain.
Putin's first trip outside the Moscow region since January only happened in April. At that time, amid talk of falling approval ratings, he suddenly went to St. Petersburg and visited a sports school, apparently hoping that this would help him regain the people's affection.
You've been doing gymnastics for 7 years?
Wait, do you mean gymnastics?
And how old are you? 10. I wish you the best of luck, girls. Thank you. Everything is going to be just fine.
Every now and then, at various moments, he feels the need to show that he still possesses the genuine traits, characteristics, and qualities of a real human being, and not just a figure from a digital computer screen or a television set, as many people might naturally think. That is exactly why he has to put on a performance and pretend to be a living, breathing humanoid entity. So, that is why these little excursions happen from time to time.
But the most telling thing is that even during the pandemic, Putin didn't stay in isolation for this long. Back then, the longest pause without trips was 132 days. And in the years before the pandemic and the full-scale invasion, the dictator could go up to 45 days without traveling. And all of this increasingly seems less like caution and more like genuine fear.
It is certainly possible that some secret negotiations behind the dictator's back, of course, could be happening. And in fact, we can see this just from such a basic understanding of history. It should be understood that there are absolutely no guarantees that everything is fine for Putin in this regard. On the contrary, with a very high degree of probability, some conspiracies could very well be actively brewing behind his back. Within this specific context
of drone attacks on Russia, the Kremlin has clearly started to get nervous. And the closer the war gets to Russia itself, the more cautious the Russian dictator becomes. But what is he afraid of? More? Ukrainian strikes or an internal conspiracy?
I think he is more afraid of internal conspiracies than of Shahed drone strikes. And even though he hardly ever ventures out to any other locations, that is exactly why he consistently chooses not to travel very much at all. Of course, he is significantly more deeply concerned and afraid of internal conspiracies, though, from which he is certainly trying to protect himself. But he can never be entirely and absolutely certain that he is safe.
Arrests of generals, dismissal of officials, and the constant search for traitors within the system itself. This is clearly not just happening for no reason.
Well, it's already classic, just the classic decline of a dictator when he's genuinely afraid that something could come at him from every corner. He fears being attacked by those who just yesterday swore eternal loyalty to him.
There was a telling moment, even at the Grand Parade in Moscow on May 9th.
There were several key members from the Security Council, specifically Medvedev and Shoigu. There were Matvienko, Volodin, and Mishustin. And maybe there were some even lower-ranking figures present, but they didn't really stand out. Furthermore, none of them were actually sitting next to Putin. And if you take a close look at that very reception, there was a large table set for about 13 people. And at that specific table, there were no other Russian representatives to be seen, except for Putin himself.
And how could we possibly do without body doubles these days? Even though the Kremlin denies their existence, they've always been around.
From my perspective, this is first and foremost a security measure. Why is it a security measure? Well, primarily, it's designed to ensure that whenever Vladimir Putin is traveling somewhere, it stays totally unclear which specific route he is actually taking at that time. The main thing that the existence of these body doubles should really tell us is that Putin's long-standing paranoia has been around for quite a long while now, and nowadays it has simply reached its absolute peak.
And if you add together all the isolation, the fear of traveling, the purges, and the talk about body doubles, it's no longer just the image of a closed-off leader. It's a system where the one who kept everyone in fear for years is now starting to be afraid of everything around him. And the main change in the Kremlin today isn't politics, but paranoia.
How does this old man keep appearing on screen? Once again, Putin's body doubles. The bunker dweller's recent activity, noted by observers, of course involved body doubles. See for yourself.
Xi Jinping won't give Putin money for the power of Siberia.
Misha, redo everything. Your face looks boring. No one will give you any money.
Perhaps in the case of the Russian dictator, Xi didn't give money not because of a boring face, but because the face wasn't even Putin's, but that of his double. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that, previously, the Russian dictator had already been caught using body doubles during official meetings with the leader of China.
By the way, he slipped up at the airport. When meeting with Chinese representatives and Russian diplomats, he extended a greeting to them using only his left hand. But when finally meeting with Xi Jinping, he used his right hand instead. It is a fact that Putin's right hand was almost entirely non-functional. Consequently, he was seen to have used it only very rarely. To gesture?
The foundation for discussing body doubles is the bipolar behavior of the Russian dictator. On one hand, Putin is a highly paranoid man who meets with various foreign leaders and his own ministers at a significant cannon shot distance.
Of course, I understand. We share a common concern about what is happening in the security sphere in Europe. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. We have all gathered here today to carefully discuss the situation that is unfolding in Donbass. On the
other hand, the same dictator, afraid of germs, viruses, and enemy intelligence agents, from time to time demonstrates an extraordinary, for a bunker prisoner, bravery.
This part of the ward collapsed, right? Yes. Where are we now?
Yes.
So I have the second floor and they have the first floor. Do you like it? Yes, of course.
So what started out mostly as an internet meme about the existence of Banquet Putin, the Talker, and the Udmurt against the backdrop of the full-scale war with Ukraine and, as a result, the increased threat to the dictator's life has turned into reality.
His visits to the occupied South are a complete staged performance and a poorly organized one at that. It wasn't Putin who took part in it, but his double. There was a very big difference both in Putin's behavior and appearance. He would never have gotten into that vehicle and in that manner. He wouldn't have interacted with the so-called local population, because we understand that access to the real Putin in the Kremlin is very limited, even for his own people. In
an interview with The Sun, the former head of British intelligence MI6, Richard Dearlove, confirmed that Putin uses body doubles for his own security. According to the former intelligence officer, the use of body doubles is essentially standard practice for dictators like Putin.
Ukraine is demonstrating the ability to strike deep into Russian territory. This increases the Kremlin's concern about Putin's vulnerability, especially outdoors or in loosely controlled environments.
Ukrainian intelligence believes that there are at least 3 Putin body doubles in Russia. Dictator standing candidates were chosen for similar body types: mannerisms, behavior, gait, facial expressions, and facial features.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, hello. I am a student and I study at St. Petersburg State University. I want to ask, is it true that you have many body doubles?
Well, after giving it a lot of thought, I have decided that just one particular person in this world should ever speak using my own distinctive voice and look exactly like me. And that person will be me.
No matter how hard you try with makeup, you can't fool artificial intelligence. Several years earlier, the Japanese TV channel TBS conducted a study using artificial intelligence technologies. Experts compared Putin's face and movements during various public events with different photos and videos of the dictator. And it showed only between 53% and 18% similarity. The conclusion of the study was that there are at least 2 Putin doubles.
And now another sensational insider report from the Kremlin towers. Putin could be declared emperor as early as the end of the year. As reported by the same Kremlin insider, allegedly citing a reliable source, there are just under 4 months left until the elections, and political tensions inside the Kremlin are already heating up seriously. At the same time, the main discussion at the very top is about what will happen to the country after Putin leaves. More precisely, in the event that he is no longer able to fulfill his duties. According to the same source, the intensification of this backstage dialogue first began right after the new year, and as time goes on, the isolated voices among officials are turning into a clearly audible chorus. It is obvious that Putin's departure will completely change the balance of the system, no matter what the circumstances, and in order to avoid a fierce struggle for the successor's post between the clans, an alternative option is now being considered. A source from the Kremlin towers reports, and I quote, "Putin may be declared a sort of emperor. He will remain the chief arbiter, but against this backdrop, the influence of other figures and bodies is growing, including the government and the security apparatus. This scheme is promoted by Federal Protective Service officials who want it implemented by year-end. It all seems vague and, frankly, extremely strange." That's all for now. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you next time.